What are you into? Trump's inner circle, amid escalating tensions over legal and political strategy. Sources close to multiple GOP lawmakers and former administration officials indicate that at least 3 prominent Republican senators and a handful of longtime Trump-aligned strategists have quietly stepped back from public endorsements or advisory roles in recent days, prompting an explosive reaction from the former president during a live television appearance earlier this evening. The developments center on growing unease within parts of the party regarding ongoing legal battles, fundraising pressures, and internal disagreements about the direction of the Republican agenda, heading into critical election cycles. Trump, speaking live on a conservative-leaning network, visibly reacted with frustration, using the term betrayal multiple times as he addressed what he described as disloyalty from individuals he had previously supported and elevated within the party. The on-air moment, which lasted several minutes, included pointed references to specific unnamed Republicans, whom he accused of abandoning the America First movement at a crucial time. While no formal announcements of complete breaks have been issued by the individuals in question, private conversations and public body language have fueled speculation that a fracture is widening. Republican National Committee officials and campaign operatives have so far declined to comment directly on the reported shifts, referring questions to individual offices. The former president's team, however, has moved quickly to frame the situation as an orchestrated effort by establishment forces to undermine his influence. This unfolding situation relates directly to the broader political realignment that has defined the Republican Party since 2016, where loyalty to Trump personally has often been treated as a litmus test. Now, with multiple court cases, financial disclosure pressures, and shifting public opinion polls creating new calculations for elected officials and donors, some longtime allies appear to be recalibrating their positions. The matter is playing out across cable news, social media platforms, and private fundraising channels rather than through any single formal institutional process, such as a congressional hearing or party vote. At this hour, the full scope of who has pulled back and to what degree remains fluid and partially unconfirmed. Multiple outlets have begun cross-referencing names mentioned in Trump's live remarks with recent public statements, campaign finance records, and travel schedules. No one involved has yet confirmed an outright abandonment of support for Trump's political future, but the language of withdrawal, reduced visibility, and strategic silence has become unmistakable to seasoned observers of GOP dynamics. This issue stems from a series of high-stakes developments that have accumulated over the past 18 months, beginning with intensified legal scrutiny following the 2020 election and accelerating through multiple indictments, civil trials, and appeals. The former president's legal team has consistently portrayed these cases as politically motivated attacks designed to derail his ability to seek office again, a narrative that resonated strongly with his core base, but has faced growing skepticism among some institutional Republicans who worry about long-term damage to the party brand. Key inflection points include the handling of classified documents, election-related inquiries in multiple jurisdictions, and a high-profile civil fraud judgment that carried substantial financial penalties. Each development forced Republican office holders into repeated public positions, either full-throated defense or carefully worded statements that avoided outright condemnation while stopping short of complete endorsement. Over time, the constant cycle of legal headlines, fundraising appeals tied to those headlines, and intra-party recriminations has created fatigue among some lawmakers who face their own re-election pressures in competitive districts or states. Compounding the strain has been the emergence of alternative power centers within the Republican ecosystem. Several prominent governors, senators, and House members have built independent donor networks and policy agendas that do not always align with Trump's immediate priorities. Meanwhile, major donors who once funneled 7- and 8-figure sums into Trump-aligned super PACs have reportedly begun diversifying their giving, directing resources toward down-ballot races or potential future presidential aspirants seen as less legally encumbered. Public opinion data during this period has shown a slow but measurable softening of support for Trump among self-identified moderate and college-educated Republicans, even as his hold on the primary electorate remains formidable. Party leaders have privately acknowledged the challenge of maintaining unity when the dominant figure faces so many simultaneous battles. Several high-profile Republicans who previously served in Trump's cabinet or inner circle have already published memoirs or given interviews that offer mixed assessments of his leadership style, further normalizing criticism within elite GOP circles. These background dynamics set the stage for the current moment where even symbolic gestures of distance, such as skipping a rally appearance, declining to appear on a Trump-friendly program, or issuing a vague statement about focusing on constituent priorities are being interpreted as meaningful shifts. Trump's inner circle has long viewed such moves as early warning signs of disloyalty, and the former president himself has a well-documented history of responding forcefully when he perceives betrayal from former allies. Tonight's televised reaction therefore fits a larger pattern, but the intensity and the specific choice of language suggests that the number or identity of those pulling away has crossed a personal threshold for Trump. The coming days will likely reveal whether this represents a limited number of individual decisions or the beginning of a broader realignment within the party. According to information gathered from multiple sources across broadcast interviews, social media activity, campaign finance filings, and background conversations with GOP operatives, the reported distancing appears most pronounced among a small but symbolically significant group of Republicans. 2 sitting U.S. senators, one from a battleground state and another from a traditionally red state with a large donor class, have noticeably reduced their public mentions of Trump over the past 3 weeks. Neither has appeared at recent events headlined by the former president, and both have issued statements in the last 48 hours focusing exclusively on legislative priorities or local issues rather than national party leadership. In addition, at least 2 former senior White House officials who remained vocal surrogates through much of 2024 and early 2025 have gone silent on Trump-related matters in recent public appearances. One of these individuals was spotted at a private fundraising dinner last week, where the guest of honor was a potential 2028 contender, widely viewed as occupying a post-Trump lane within the party. Campaign finance disclosures filed in the past month show a measurable redirection of contributions from certain high-dollar bundlers who previously routed funds almost exclusively through Trump-aligned entities. During the live television segment that sparked widespread attention, Trump's on-camera reaction unfolded over roughly 7 minutes. He began by discussing a separate policy matter before pivoting abruptly to the loyalty question. Viewers noted his tone shift from measured to visibly agitated as he named no individuals directly, but used phrases such as, "people I carried on my back after everything we did for them," and repeated variations of betrayal and disgraceful. The host attempted several times to steer the conversation back to policy, but Trump returned to the theme at one point, looking directly into the camera and stating that some folks think they can walk away now that the heat is on. They'll learn. Post-broadcast analysis by political reporters has cross-referenced the timing of Trump's remarks with a handful of recent news items. A major newspaper profile quoting anonymous Republicans expressing private doubts about the sustainability of Trump-centric messaging. A leaked memo from a prominent conservative think tank suggesting the party should prepare contingency plans for non-Trump leadership. And social media posts from influential conservative accounts that subtly question the wisdom of tying the party's future too closely to ongoing legal proceedings. No one named or implied in Trump's comments has issued a direct rebuttal as of this hour. Spokespeople for the individuals most frequently mentioned in speculation have either declined comment or offered generic statements about continuing to support Republican principles and candidates. The former president's own communications team has amplified clips of the segment across affiliated platforms, framing it as proof of establishment resistance to the grassroots base. At present, no formal party mechanism, such as a resolution from the Republican National Committee, a caucus vote, or an open letter, has materialized to codify or refute the reported shifts. The absence of such institutional markers keeps the story in the realm of interpersonal and factional maneuvering rather than an official schism. Observers caution that public displays of distance do not always translate to permanent breaks. Many Republicans have oscillated in their proximity to Trump, depending on electoral math, legal headlines, and polling trends. Still, the speed with which the betrayal language spread across conservative media ecosystems and prompted defensive responses from Trump loyalists indicates that the moment has struck a nerve. Fundraising thermometers tied to Trump's leadership PAC showed a brief but noticeable uptick in small-dollar donations in the immediate aftermath of the broadcast, suggesting the narrative of disloyalty may be energizing his core supporters even as it alienates others. Lawmakers and legal experts are responding along predictable, yet increasingly sharpened partisan and institutional lines. Trump's most steadfast congressional allies have moved swiftly to denounce any perceived wavering as weakness or opportunism. Several House members and at least one senator appeared on friendly programs within hours of the broadcast, accusing unnamed colleagues of cutting and running when the movement needs solidarity most. These voices frame the reported distancing as evidence that establishment Republicans fear the continued vitality of the America First coalition and are positioning themselves for a future without Trump's dominance. Conversely, a quieter but growing cohort of Republican governors, senators from purple or swing-leaning states, and influential donors has adopted a stance of studied neutrality. Public statements from this group tend to emphasize constitutional processes, the importance of winning winnable races, and the need for the party to focus on policy deliverables rather than personality-driven battles. A few have gone further in off-the-record settings, telling associates that endless legal entanglements and confrontational rhetoric risk alienating suburban voters and independent donors essential to holding congressional majorities. Legal analysts and historians of American political parties have offered more detached assessments. Several noted that personal loyalty tests have periodically fractured parties before, most memorably during the decline of the Whigs in the 1850s, the post-Watergate Republican realignment, and the Tea Party insurgency of the early 2010s. In each case, a dominant figure or faction eventually either consolidated power or gave way to new leadership. Commentators differ on whether Trump's current position more closely resembles Andrew Jackson's enduring grip on the Democrats of his era or Barry Goldwater's temporary ideological triumph followed by electoral setback. Prominent conservative intellectuals have split visibly. Some argue that any retreat from Trump at this juncture would constitute an unforgivable abandonment of the voters who twice delivered him the nomination and who still form the largest single bloc in Republican primaries. Others contend that the party's long-term health requires broadening its appeal beyond one individual, especially given demographic trends and the mounting legal calendar. A small number of never-Trump voices from 2016 and 2020 have re-emerged to suggest that the current moment validates their earlier warnings about the risks of cult of personality politics. Mainstream media coverage has largely treated the story as a window into GOP anxiety, rather than a definitive break. Cable panels have featured a mix of Trump defenders, party strategists hedging their bets, and Democratic operatives eager to highlight internal Republican discord. Social media metrics show the betrayal clip garnering millions of views with engagement heavily polarized, intense support from pro-Trump accounts, and gleeful commentary from critics who see the moment as a long-awaited crack in the facade. No official statement from the Republican National Committee or any congressional leadership office has confirmed or denied the existence of a coordinated move away from Trump. The silence itself has become part of the story, interpreted by some as tacit acknowledgement that the party is quietly preparing for multiple possible futures. The next steps in this developing situation are likely to unfold across several parallel tracks rather than through a single decisive event. In the immediate term, attention will center on whether additional Republicans, particularly those who have remained publicly loyal thus far, choose to issue clarifying statements, adjust their event schedules, or alter their social media engagement patterns in ways that either reinforce or further dilute perceptions of distance from Trump. Campaign operatives on all sides are already monitoring booking requests for upcoming conservative conferences, donor retreats, and primary season rallies. A noticeable pattern of absences or substitutions could solidify the narrative of a widening rift within Trump's orbit. The response is expected to escalate in both rhetorical intensity and organizational focus. Advisors have historically used moments of perceived disloyalty to rally the base through targeted fundraising appeals, rapid response digital content, and direct outreach to high-value supporters. Expect accelerated deployment of disloyalty messaging across affiliated platforms, coupled with renewed emphasis on loyalty pledges, endorsement tallies, and public score settling. The former president himself may schedule additional unscripted television or podcast appearances in the coming days to keep the issue front and center, potentially naming individuals or factions more explicitly if silence from those implicated persists. On the institutional side, congressional Republicans face their own calendar pressures. With budget negotiations, appropriations deadlines, and potential confirmations looming in the coming months, party leaders will be incentivized to project unity, even as private conversations about long-term positioning intensify. Watch for subtle shifts in committee assignments, floor speech themes, and caucus messaging that quietly de-emphasize Trump's specific issues while elevating broader Republican policy goals. Should any sitting member publicly acknowledge re-evaluating their relationship with the former president, it would likely trigger a cascade of follow-up reporting and counterstatements from loyalists. Donor behavior will serve as a critical leading indicator. Major fundraising events scheduled for late winter and early spring are already being scrutinized for attendee lists, headliners, and contribution patterns. A measurable pivot of large checks toward non-Trump-aligned PACs, state parties, or prospective 2028 vehicles would lend concrete weight to the abandonment narrative. Conversely, a surge in Trump sex-centric giving, especially from small-dollar donors reacting to the betrayal framing, could blunt the story's momentum and demonstrate that the base remains intact legally and procedurally. The backdrop of ongoing cases continues to shape the environment. Any significant ruling, filing, or hearing in the near term could either reinforce the case for distance if outcomes appear increasingly unfavorable, or galvanize renewed solidarity if perceived as vindication. Trump's team has signaled readiness to tie courtroom developments directly to party loyalty tests, framing criticism or neutrality as de facto alignment with opposing forces. Longer term, the trajectory depends heavily on electoral math. Should early primary polling in key states show sustained strength for Trump despite the current turbulence, hesitant Republicans may quietly return to the fold rather than risk alienating the dominant primary electorate. If, however, alternative figures begin to consolidate meaningful support in surveys or early money, the incentives to distance could harden into more permanent realignments. Party rules changes, convention delegate strategies, and super PAC alignments will all become battlegrounds in this larger contest over the Republican future. No single actor, neither Trump nor any individual senator or donor, can unilaterally dictate the outcome. The process will instead be a cumulative one, shaped by dozens of small decisions over weeks and months. The absence of an immediate party-wide crisis point means the story remains fluid with momentum swinging based on the next visible gesture, statement, or data point. We will continue to monitor this developing situation closely and bring updates as verified information becomes available from primary sources, public statements, campaign finance records, and on-there comments by those directly involved. For now, this remains an ongoing internal Republican Party dynamic, characterized by interpersonal tensions, strategic repositioning, and competing narratives about loyalty, legacy, and the path forward. No irreversible institutional break has occurred. No mass exodus of elected officials has been declared, and no formal challenge to Trump's leadership position within the party has materialized. The language of betrayal and abandonment reflects deeply felt personal and political stakes on one side, while gestures of distance or neutrality reflect pragmatic calculations about electoral viability, donor relations, and legal exposure on the other.